think I was 9 or 10 years old when my father asked me to wash 11 pairs of white, dirty socks of young men my age who had just lost a soccer game due to a penalty that I caused. That loss of that match brought him shame, and he regretted insisting that I play soccer. I was given a defense position, and I thought that's great because I can obscure my incompetence in the sport. I can just be at the back somewhere there. But the unexpected happened. A ball appeared from the sky, like a mirage, unavoidable in my direction. I did everything possible except picking the ball. When I woke up from what seemed to be a short dream, I was on the ground with a ball tucked quite neatly in my arms. And I heard a voice of my father calling from the crowd with his hands resting at the back of his head. You're supposed to kick the ball and not dance with it. I come from a place, or rather a continent, that continues to be rampaged by war, greed, intolerance, corruption. In contrast, the beauty of its people and cultures. What stands between power and art? Our identities, and these identities are connected to the landscape of the people, their expressions and their emotions. One of my collaborators in 2004, in one of my works, Somehow Delightful, summed it up quite beautifully, connecting the expressions of the people to the landscape with their own stories. And he said, the only thing I know, the only thing my eyes can see, the only thing my nose can smell, the only thing my tongue can taste, the real life in the world we live in. I'm not talking about Cinderella. I'm not talking about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I'm not talking about Harry Potter and the philosophers. I'm not talking about a prince who once saved her princess from death with a special kiss. I'm talking about the only thing I know, the real life
in the world of living. I'm talking about the place where ocean stomachs are filled with hunger until they're close to bursting. Mountains cry tears of blood for their horizons, who are hanged and burned in the infinity.
That's what I'm talking about. I come from a place in Soweto, next to a hostel. Every time I would watch men who were coming from different parts of Southern Africa living in the hostels, they would be competing amongst themselves with very organized, traditional Xhosa and Zulu and Basotho dances. These men will be dancing about the place they come from, connecting their stories of displacement to the story of the place they were in. I was amazed by the intricate nature of their choreographies, sweat dripping down their muscle bodies, a harsh descent of a leg trembling the floor. The euphoria of movement engulfed my mind, and I realized later on that their movement was not just the movement of the euphoria, but it holds truth to the place they come from. It's a story of men and women leaving their households, coming to big cities like Johannesburg, seeking opportunities. It is a story of men digging deep down in the belly of the earth, searching for that shiny metal stone that they may never own. It is a story of men who are using their dance as a form of connecting to themselves, connecting to the lives they are living. in these atrocities, in the places that didn't give them the decency of life. I believe very strongly that this connection, my exposure to the traditional forms, helped me to have some compassion towards the other, towards their tradition, towards their culture, towards their aesthetics, towards their form. My work has always been about the embodiment of art, culture, tradition, society, and treats the body as a moving portrait that continues to find transitional points in tradition and language. My dance is my calling. My dance is a dance of a man who grew up with smoke that filled up the air all the time. Smoke coming from the households burning coal to keep us warm in the winter periods. Smoke coming from the burning tires and buildings in the streets. Smoke coming from tear gas fired by policemen who were dispersing crowds of protesters. My dance is a dance of a man who lived with an idea of fulfilling my parents' desire of being a medical doctor. A man who knew that being a professional was being a school teacher, was being a clerk working for government. To be a dancer was a phenomenon that was not easily achievable.
One day
I was sitting at home and my father was reading his newspaper. And I spotted an advertisement in the paper. It was calling for young people to be trained in dance. And at that moment, I felt something changing in me. My feet were leaving the ground. My soul was taking me to places that I've never been before. The promised land, the nirvana. I went for that audition. I was accepted. We made a promise between myself and my mother that I will finish school with good grades, which I did. Unfortunately, I didn't go back to study medicine, as this was really our desire. We also made a promise that my father will not know about this. So this became our secret. Until a picture of me dancing was in the newspaper. The one that he reads, I was devastated, and I thought, oh my goodness, that's the end of my dream. And when I went home, I opened the door. My father was right in the middle of the room. And he was staring at the newspaper. He opened his arms. He gave me such a warm hug. I melted in his arms. I knew at that time that this dance was not to escape me. But I also knew that this dance was not just going to be a dance of the euphoria. This dance was going to change our lives. This dance was going to be the dance of the people, by the people, for the people. In 1999, I created Vuyani Dance Theatre as a space for stories to be developed.
A place that was to transform our disadvantages and turn them into advantage by reimagining our pain through beautifully crafted choreographies that do not only spoke about the demise of our social ills, but to create leaders. Leaders who are going to be able to replicate the founding ethos.
live in a world that is full of possibilities and contradictions. As artists, we are inspired by chaos that lies underneath our skin. Chaos that drives us to finally take that leap of faith to want to do something, to change something, and to change and to touch somebody else, to change their life. This dance between the state of possibility and contradiction is not only a dance of the euphoria, it's a dance that is connected to what we know, the stories of our forefathers, the collective vision of us being free in the dance. This dance is our business. In fact, the great thing about dancers is that we're always fighting for perfection. Perfecting a movement, a turn, and we maneuver complicated movements. Sometimes we fail, but we try again. And maybe still fail, but we never give up. Because deep down we know that investing in the human spirit is more important than just building wealth. I believe every child should be given an opportunity to experience a dance, to experiment with the arts, to unlock their creative potential. I look at young people like Kolisi here. Oh, he's not so young anymore. He's a man, he's an old man now. He's got 2 kids. So he's got a responsibility to himself, to his family, to his community. But what is interesting about him is that he arrived from Eastern Cape with just a suitcase, and he walked into my studio and he said, I want to dance. And I said, why? That's great, you can always dance. That's what I've always heard from the people. Every time I introduce myself to say I am a dancer, there's always a follow-on question. So what else do you do? But unfortunately for him, he was at the right place. So I said to him, so what else can you do? And he said, I sing. And I said, that's an addition, that's great. But what can you offer? And he said, I only have this suitcase with me. I don't know what else I can offer you. And I said, well, we need to open that suitcase. Because I believe every element, every item in that suitcase has a story to tell. And we can unpack all these stories and package them for the world to enjoy. As Vuyani Dance Theatre, that's what we do. We package our own stories. We sell them to the world. In that way, we're able to sustain ourselves. We are able to give back into our communities. We are able to plow into the schools' programs and introduce the arts. And I believe very strongly that the arts should be part of the curriculum for the schools, to teach us something about us, to teach us about humanity. And I look at the people I work with, like Kolisi, the dancers, the musicians, the writers. I know that enough genius, unsurpassed energy exists. I know that when we wrap a project, enough imagination exists. I created with that notion a form, an aesthetic which we call a cocktail. It's not your pina colada or your Bloody Mary, which I sometimes get to enjoy because they have such cool names. But my cocktail takes us on a roller coaster of emotions. It's a cocktail that gives us hope when it's lost. In 2007, I created a work, Beautiful Me, which was questioning the atrocities that are committed around the world, asking leaders difficult questions that maybe they don't even have answers. But it was connecting me and my ancestors and the people around the world. I thought I found one. But by looking back, by thinking about those who are not here tonight, there is a possibility to talk to all of those we can't see. A possibility to confront the ones who have power, in Afghanistan, in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, in the United States of America, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. A possibility to talk to all those who have departed and ask for their forgiveness.